Good evening. Good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate this Friday evening. The Omicron variant has reached India. It is now confirmed that 2 cases have been detected in the state of Karnataka. Many passengers who returned from foreign countries have also been tested. Samples for the positive ones have been sent for genome sequencing, not just in Karnataka, but in several other states, which means that there may be more cases. We're waiting for the final results on these, but we cannot take the situation lightly. I'm not trying to alarm you, but I am going to talk about this for the next 1 hour. And the reason is very simple. You need to arm yourself with facts. You need to arm yourself with information such that you don't and we don't spread panic. We are here tonight with our experts to allay your fears about what's coming and all your queries about Omicron. The Health Ministry itself has released a detailed FAQ about the new variant that will help you understand the extent of the spread of the virus, what we know so far about the virus, how it's behaving, what are the symptoms, and how transmissible is it. I'm going to take some of those questions to begin with. And as we proceed over the next 1 hour, we'll tell you a lot more about this new variant. Question 1. What makes Omicron a variant of concern? As you know, that's the term that WHO has used, calling this variant a variant of concern. This is because the variant shows a large number of mutations, over 30 mutations on this variant itself. And that, according to experts and scientists, is a concerning fact. The fact that a lot of these mutations are present in the key element of this variant that decides of how it responds to any kind of an attack is important. Why is it also a variant of concern? Because this is fast becoming a dominant variant in South Africa, where it was detected first. We don't know that that's where it started. But the number of these cases are fast overtaking the other prevalent variant, which is the Delta variant across the world so far. Can the current diagnosis detect Omicron? Yes, it can. The RT-PCR test, which is what we use, detects 3 specific genes, spike gene heavily mutated in case of Omicron. The results could indicate absence of the spike gene, that is how you get a confirmation on whether or not it is Omicron. And of course, there's a detailed genome sequencing that needs to be done for the final confirmation. But RT-PCR is the starting step to know. How concerned should we be? That's essentially what we're all asking for the past week, 10 days. Well, the WHO has declared this as a variant of concern, and their own analysis of the initial information suggests that there is high risk involved here, and which is why it needs to be tracked very closely. It needs to be studied very well. We cannot let our guard down until we know more about this variant. What precautions should we take? Nothing changes. You have to take exactly the same precautions that you've been taking all this while, or maybe had started to take it lightly. You have to wear your mask, double mask up if possible. All experts say double mask is better than a single mask. You need to maintain your distances. You need to ensure that you take your vaccines on time whenever you're eligible for the first dose, second dose, at some point a booster dose. You need to do that. You need to stay in areas with good ventilation, not in closed, camped up places. And of course, maintain your distance from other people. These are the things that we've been telling you for the past almost 2 years now. And nothing changes. The variant may have changed. Your way of dealing with it really doesn't change. Will there be a third wave? Well, the government's FAQ says Omicron cases are likely to spread to more countries. I think we're seeing that as each day progresses. The severity and the magnitude, though, of this variant is still not clear. The severity of the disease anticipated to be low, but the scientific evidence of the variant is still evolving. So initial signs show maybe it's not as serious as the previous ones, but we cannot assume right now that that's what it will be. Will existing vaccines work against the Omicron? Well, we don't have evidence to show that they will or they won't. And so that's really a wait and watch kind of a situation. But beyond this, If you have more queries or if you want to go into details of any of these aspects, our phone lines are open. Tonight, that's all we're going to do. The only way we don't feel scared, the only way we can be better prepared is by arming ourselves with facts and information. And our experts are here to help us with that. How do we differentiate? And is there enough data to differentiate, Dr. Rajesh Parikh, that this is not because people are vaccinated, it's actually because of the kind of variant it is?
Well, hi, Tanvi. Always a pleasure to be with you. But at the risk of being repetitive, here's a hat trick of compliments. Do prepare to bow, if at all that is possible when you're seated. Tremendous opening. I think this is one of your finest openings. You summarized, and like the other co-panelists, I was just wondering, what am I doing here? Tanvi said everything.
I have lots more questions, and I'm hoping all of you have the answers to that.
I know, but you also promised our viewers that we will try to allay their apprehensions. So your question actually dovetails right into that. You know what we've seen so far? On the 11th of November, the first 3 cases came up in Botswana, and now it is about 21 deaths, and to the best of my knowledge, there's not a single death. This is so different from what happened during the Delta variant. So what we see clearly right now is a high rate of transmissibility, but a very low or negligible rate of lethality. And which is why what Professor Chauhan said resonates with me. He in fact echoed it as a plea to the virus: go ahead, spread, but don't be lethal. And that reminded me of a famous exchange between Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. Einstein was very fond of his aphorisms, God does not play dice, and all sorts of things. And at one point, Niels Bohr told him, Einstein, please stop telling God what to do. So I think we have to stop telling the virus what to do and just watch. Yes, of course, we have to be concerned. Yes, we have to be cautious. But there is a possibility, and what Dr. Chauhan said resonates with me as well. There does seem to be a glimmer of hope that the high transmissibility might work in our favor. It's like the Japanese art of jujitsu, where the opponent's strength actually becomes the weakness. So the fact that a highly mutated virus spreads very rapidly, but does not seem to be lethal, seems to be the key thing to allay our apprehensions. Now, whether it evades the vaccine or not, of course, it's an important question, but it's not such a profound question. And one thing that nobody has talked about, I'd just like to, again, in the same vein of allaying apprehensions, there seems to be treatment. GlaxoSmithKline has just announced that a new drug of theirs seems to work very well on this variant. So I think there's a lot to feel happy about the vaccination part of it. It's quite clear that it's more in the unvaccinated compared to the vaccinated. The molecular and genetic structure of the virus seems to indicate that with its high rate of mutation, it could possibly evade vaccine-induced immunity. But on the other hand, hey, how does that matter if it's not very lethal or severe?
Yes, how does it matter if it's not lethal or severe? Though many people, and because a lot of us function in a straight-jacketed way, unfortunately, and don't really get into the nuances where they say, where many believe, vaccine le liya, to ab ho gaya. Now we are all good, we are all safe. And every time they hear about a case of a breakthrough infection, that's the first response that you hear. Oh, that person was double vaccinated and still got infected. But let's go across to Captain Jakpal calling us from Rohtak, one of our regular viewers. Good evening, Captain Jakpal. Go ahead, please. What would you like to ask?
Tanvi, good evening. We are absolutely annoyed and cut up. You people kept us off for so long. And very, very good evening to this learned panel. I'm a 75-year-old army officer. I'm fully vaccinated. I read 4 newspapers. And if the newspaper vendor, agent, we had 12, 13 boys come, they are infected. And I read this paper 4 times a day. In the morning, put it on my face, go for a nap. In the afternoon, in the evening, at night. That means I play with this virus throughout the day. What are my chances of surviving?
Okay. Thank you, Captain Jakpal, as always, for calling and asking your query. Dr. Rajesh Parikh, do you want to take this question? The biggest concern here, being for the 75-year-old army man, is that he accesses 4 newspapers every day. Should he stop that subscription to avoid exposure?
Well, that's an interesting question, Captain. First of all, let me begin by thanking you for the tremendous service that you and your fellow army officers have rendered our country. Given your age, I assume you've defended this nation more than once in its past history. And all of us are here now to look after you and to defend you and to return what you've done for the country. Well, first of all, my suggestion, try not to read the newspaper 4 times a day. Once should be enough. Watch people like Tanvi. We're on an electronic medium right now. I read most of my news on the iPad, by the way. But, some of us are just used to the habit of the newspaper. It's more than reading on the paper. It's the aroma of the paper, handling of the paper. These are all important cues. If you do that, all you need to do, sir, is just wash your hands after you've handled the paper and try to avoid handling it repeatedly. There's another thing you can do, of course, and that is install a UV machine in your house. We have 2 of them in our house, and whatever papers come in, they go through a UV desanitization before we handle them. So I think a triple approach. 1, read the newspaper as infrequently as possible in the course of the day. 2, sanitize yourself, and of course, sanitize the newspaper. And if you do that, Captain, you'll be able to defend your body as well as you've defended the nation in the past.
I only heard the part where you said watch Mirror Now more, and that would be helpful. But Dr. Parikh, would you like to come in on this as well?
Yes, I'd like to weigh in on the issue of airborne transmission. The question has come up twice, and I think the answer, the way the Omicron seems to dodge the vaccine-induced antibodies, I think some of the answers seems to have evaded the question. The question is there evidence for airborne transmission in Omicron? Yes. And it came a little early. 2 patients in Hong Kong, both not in contact with each other, but close enough. And the second patient got it. That's not absolute evidence. But a very interesting thing, Tanvi, that we wrote about in January 2020 in our first book on the coronavirus. And there's a very curious guy called F.W. Wells who worked both at Harvard and Hopkins. And in 1934, published a paper on airborne transmission. And what he showed is that as a droplet descends, say from the nostril to the floor, due to gravity, of course, there are 3 variants which influence it, and those are humidity, wind velocity, and temperature. And so, indeed, something that is not airborne, depending on these 3 parameters, can clearly become airborne. And in fact, it's known as the Wells curve. So, based on what we've seen early in Hong Kong, I don't think we can rule out entirely the possibility of airborne. Let's just assume it is there. But once again, the solution to that is simple: double masking.
Solution is simple: double mask. Coming in today that the INSACOG has, suggested that we start looking at booster doses for the vulnerable category above the age of 40. Dr. Parikh, do you think now is the time for that?
Absolutely. I mean, that time was quite some time ago. But Tanvi, there's something I'd like to add. And there's a difference in the way we've now got to look at disease in a post-vaccinated world as opposed to a pre-vaccinated world. See, there is a dashboard that people like me and my responsibility as Director of Research at Just Look Hospital necessitates that I track disease on a daily basis. And on the dashboard, in the pre-vaccinated world, we were looking at how many people were getting infected. Of course, we were looking at how many are seriously ill and how many are dying. But just as in a car, when you drive a car, the dashboard gives you a tachometer, a speedometer, tons of information on the dashboard. And there are times when you focus just on the speed, particularly when you're approaching a policeman who's going to stop you if you're speeding a lot. I think the new dashboard we need to look at now is actually hospitalization and deaths. We need to divest our attention a bit from the number of people who are falling ill. And we really need to now focus our debate in people who have been vaccinated on seriousness. Because look at it. I mean, everybody gets the common cold in the world today. A huge number of people get the flu. And of course, still a lot of number of people die of the flu. It's estimated over 15,000 in the UK alone. But I think our attention in a post-vaccinated world is going to move towards hospitalization and death rather than on infections, which of course reiterates the importance of vaccination.
Yes, and a lot of experts keep saying that, but I think the real change in the way we react to this will only come when the policymakers, the governments and the people actually begin to believe that your world may not come crashing down just because you've been infected, as long as you are able to fight it and not end up in a hospital. And vaccine is a good way of ensuring that that doesn't happen. So the cases may rise, but we shouldn't panic. We shouldn't panic until we get more information. This is what we have. It's a lot more of wait and watch. Meanwhile, you don't have to do anything different than what you've been doing so far. In the last few months, if you became a little laid back about it, if you became a little casual about our COVID protocols, now is the time to get back to all of those precautions that you used to take. Hygiene, double mask, and maintaining distance. That is all that you can do, just the way you battled the COVID all of this time, even in the future. A big thank you to all of the panelists for joining me on this confirmation. A pleasure, as always.